Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today is March 18th, 2021, and we're covering a topic that's been discussed on this show over the past 15 plus years, numerous times, and that is the link between cancer and interrupted sleep. You know, the study was titled Shift Workers, but don't lose the real message here. If you're somebody who stays up late all the time, this is important to you as well. It's estimated that according to current cancer statistics in the United States, you try saying it, 1 in 2 women and 1 in 3 men will develop cancer in their lifetime. That's startling to me. That's a lot of people. And there are things that seem to increase the risk of cancer. And we're going to get to that today, and maybe even some possible takeaways to help protect you if you are someone who has to work a third shift, maybe at UPS or FedEx or something like that. Maybe there's some answers that we can discuss for you. Before we do any of that, we have to thank our title sponsor, Legendary Foods. Legendary Foods, the maker of the tasty pastry. They have 2 of them. They have the original tasty pastry, which is more like a Pop-Tart. The new one is flakier, and the crust is softer, and it really is reminiscent of like an apple turnover. But here's the beauty: less than 1 gram of sugar, depending on which one you get, 5, 3, or 4 net carbs, and the new cake style, which is the one we're promoting right now, 20 grams of high quality, high leucine protein. These are delicious. Send them. Now kids are returning to school. Put them in their lunchbox. They won't know that it's not a sugar-laden junk that they're eating. They'll love them, and they'll be getting more protein in their diet. Now, if you go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary, you can order them, and you can even save 10% off by using the code SHR10. But let's say you're a cheapskate. I'm not saying it. Somebody else told me. You can win a box. Listen to the secret word that happens during the commercial breaks. When you hear the secret word, email it to onair@superhumanradio.net. You're entered to win. We're giving away multiple boxes a day. Lots of happy people out there. So either way, you'll be able to fall in love with the tasty pastry from Legendary Foods. There, check out some of the other stuff. They have seasoned nuts. They have amazing nut butters. Lots of great stuff for people who aren't keen on consuming a lot of sugar. Again, shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10. And now, without further delay, I will bring my guest on in no particular order. And welcome to the show. We have Dr. Jason McDermott from Pacific Northwest National Labs. We have Dr. Hans Van Dagen from Washington State, and we have Dr. Soban Meady from North Carolina State. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. So who wants to take this first question? Why this study? what research had been done before this that made you look to answer some unanswered questions? Who wants to try that one first?
I'll be happy to give that a shot, Carl. It's been known for quite some time that shift workers and other people that stay up at night and do work in the early hours of the day are at increased risk of a variety of medical disorders, ranging from metabolic disorder and obesity to mental health problems to cardiovascular disease and also cancer. And the increased risk for cancer in shift workers particularly has been an enigma. We understand that working against the biological clock causes all kinds of problems, and we have a good handle on why that is so. But the increased cancer risk has been challenging to understand, and it wasn't until I started working with Dr. Gadamiti and with Dr. McDermott that we had a team together that was poised to crack this issue, was poised to figure out what was really going on, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure. But that was really the reason why this study happened. Is we knew there was a problem that we didn't understand, and it affects lots of people. There's about 20% of the population at any given time is involved in some form of shift work. So it affects lots of people, and there's something important about this that we completely did not understand, and we wanted to make sure that we did, and this was our opportunity.
Okay, so let's talk about the research itself. How was the study designed, or was this a review of existing studies? Did you do a meta-analysis? How did you approach this? You want to try that, Dr. McDermott or Dr. Gadamiti?
Sure. Go ahead.
Please go ahead, Dr. McDermott.
Yeah, so this was a study that was designed with volunteers who were exposed to two different regimens. One was a standard day shift, so they would wake up at the same time in the morning that they normally would, go to bed at the same time for 3 days. And then the other regiment was a simulated night shift. So you take normal day shift volunteers who are normally on day shift, and you shift their schedule off by about 12 hours. So now they're going to sleep when they would be waking up, and going and waking up when they would be going to sleep. Then at the end of that 3-day kind of introduction period, the subjects were kept at a constant light and regiment for 24 hours. And so they're basically in reclining chairs. They had isocaloric snacks, so small snacks at the same time, to keep all of the external environment the same. And that's really what distinguishes this experiment, which is a very controlled experiment. And then we assessed their gene expression during that time.
Okay, so when you say you check their gene expression, were you looking for specific known markers or endpoints, or did you just look at it as a whole and see what changed? Dr. Gadamiti, you want to speak to that?
Sure. So the goal is that to understand, because there is already meta-analysis, epidemiological studies suggest that shift workers prone to increased risk for cancers, especially breast cancers in women and prostate cancers in men. But we would like to question. What are the. So we would like to answer what are the mechanisms which are associated with cancer. And before that, cancer is a multi-disease which is involved at least 10 different biological pathways. So we took advantage of those biological pathways, which are disruption of any of those pathways lead to cancer. And the genes that represent those pathways, we probe those genes expression using the samples, especially white blood cell collected from our day shift controls and night shift simulated subjects. So that's why we found the mechanisms associated with cancer risk in night shift control subjects.
Interesting. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, that was my voice coming back at me from somewhere. I don't know where that came from. Okay. So there is some data out there that allowing shift workers, in fact, there's some debate whether rotating shift workers in and out of from night shift to day shift could mitigate some of this. Then there's other research out there that appears to say rotating them in and out is not a good idea because once they become acclimated to working in this shift, now you're changing it all again. Was that any consideration when you were looking at your research?
It originally was not, but we have learned a lot since then that now makes us think that this is actually a very important question. We knew this question was important to begin with, but for what we saw in our data changed the way we look at that. And one important thing to note is that in the experiment and also in most shift workers' actual experience in the real world, the biological clock in the brain, the master biological clock, if you will, does not actually change all that much because it's rather resistant to change. And so one of the problems that you have with shift work is that your biological clock doesn't adapt very, very quickly. And yes, you can stay on a night shift schedule for a prolonged period of time, a so-called fixed schedule, and eventually it will catch up with that new schedule. But very few people work more than a week or so on end in a schedule like that. And then when the weekend comes or the days off come, and you go back to a normal schedule to meet up with family and friends and do things that people need to do, then you have that problem that the biological clock, just as it was about to be adapted, has now got to endure, like you pointed out. And there's this idea out there that if you rotate your schedule, that you kind of don't give the biological clock a chance to adapt, and that you might be better off. What we found more generically in this research, not specific to cancer only, but more specifically, is that the tissues in the rest of the body are much more responsive, much more quickly to the changes associated with shift work than what the biological clock in the brain is doing. So you actually are facing the situation where your body, no matter whether you're only on shift work for just a few days or that you're staying on the same schedule for much longer, your body will change its rhythms while your biological clock in the brain is not catching up. And so you're in this internal state of desynchrony, if you will, very quickly. And now we think that debate about fast rotating and slow rotating schedules is probably not as well informed as it needs to be, and much more research needs to be done because we weren't quite understanding the time constants, the amount of time it takes for the body to adapt quite correctly, because we were focusing on the clock in the brain, which is much slower than the rest of the body, it turns out.
Well, and so now talking about peripheral clocks, which you're talking about right now, the organs have their own clock, and we have all these peripheral clocks, and coordinating the peripheral with the suprachiasmatic nuclei, which is the master clock, if you will. We know that eating and movement help the peripheral clocks to choose their time, so to speak. So, and this speaks not only to shift workers who probably just have a certain meal time, just like they have a lunchtime in the daytime at 12 o'clock, maybe the shift worker, maybe their lunchtime is 2 a.m. in the morning or something like that. But more so to the person sitting home in their recliner, watching nighttime TV and getting up and snacking constantly at night. How much does that snacking and the signals coming from food intake maybe even promote cancer to a greater degree than the guy or gal who has that one meal at their 2 a.m. lunchtime and then goes home and goes to sleep at 10 a.m. in the morning? So eating, what role does this have in this whole process of cancer? Who wants to grab that?
Oh, there's so much to say about that. Shobhan, you want to take a first shot at it?
Sure. So the peripheral clocks are very much impacted by the food, the time of the day we take the food, and especially during the night time. So it is not only the clock, our biological clock, not only disturbed by the light at night, because we are supposed to sleep during night time when our clock is low or inactive. We are supposed to be active during the daytime. So having the constant uptake of the food or consumption of the food during nighttime, it is likely disturbs our biological clock, and which the influence on clock disruption or misalignment could be more profound than just performing the night duty, which is with a minimal influence by the food intake.
So this question I want to put to Dr. McDermott for a second. So, we're all fascinated by time-restricted feeding now. It's really made it into the mainstream. People are writing articles about intermittent fasting. Does it sound like, for the shift worker, that restricting their eating at that time during the night, but holding off till they get off their shift and they're getting ready to go to bed, or they've just awoken from their sleep, to save their meal consumption for that window of time? Do you think there's any benefit for them to start to pay attention to time-restricted feeding, since we're not supposed to eat at night?
Yeah, I don't, our research didn't speak directly to that, I would say. And I know that there's a good body of other research that's available here, but I would defer to Hans for that discussion, because I'm not as familiar with that research.
Happy to chime in, Jason.
Please.
You're absolutely right, Cole, that the sleep restriction and as a tool to mitigate some of these health consequences has gained popularity, and I think it's an important way to go. And it's for a long time it's been believed that the time that you eat has something to do with the calories that you pack, and there's good reason to think that, because there's hormones that coordinate your hunger and your satiation, that when you feel that you've had enough, and when you're in a shift work situation or jet lagged or otherwise misaligned with the time of the light dark cycle, then those hormones get out of sync with each other, and it turns out that you then start craving food at the wrong time of day, and it's typically fatty, greasy foods that you start craving. And so it's been believed for a long time that it's that just the act of eating and taking those calories in at the wrong time is how you would pack those calories, how you would actually accumulate that energy that you don't really need, and that's how you would then develop obesity over time and metabolic disorders, and ultimately leading to type 2 diabetes, for instance. But now, based on data from the same experiment, but not in this particular cancer study, but in another aspect of it, that was focused on metabolites having to do with digestion, we have learned that what actually happens when you eat at night is you start to shift the biological clock in the tissues associated with digestion. So you start to shift the peripheral clocks in the gut, in the liver, in the pancreas. And those are concerned with making sure that your food is processed properly, and that you have a proper response to glucose, for instance. And so the story of what we think people should do is maybe minimize their amount of food intake at night if they can. That hasn't really changed much, but our understanding of why it is that matters has now changed, because what we're thinking is, if you don't do that, then you're not shifting your peripheral oscillators. You're keeping your digestive system in sync with your master biological clock in the suprachiasmatic nuclei, as you pointed out. And by keeping your body and your brain in sync with each other, that leads to better health outcomes.
Okay, so now, one of my frustrations with the medical orthodoxy and how they report the hierarchy of death in America. They say the number one killer is heart disease. Number 3 is cancer. But I say that's a lie, because those are all endpoints of insulin resistance. And we know from numerous studies done today, the one that I point at most often was done with Olympic athletes, where all they did was short sleep them for 5 hours a night for 2 nights. And they had trouble managing blood sugar akin to that of 70-year-olds, literally in just 2 nights. There's studies that show when physicians move into residency and they have to stay up for 48 hours, that thyroid function and blood sugar management goes out the window. So we know that interrupting sleep, which I, by the way, blame movie Wall Street for its adaptation. When Gordon Gekko says to Bud Fox, you know, you don't make money while you sleep. I've been up all morning trading with China, and everybody thought, oh, wait, sleep is optional. I'll become successful like Gordon Gekko if I just stay up all night, which was stupid. But we know that sleep deprivation, even fragmented sleep, leads to insulin resistance, dementia, poor memory consolidation. So we know that sleep is magic. It's magic. And it leads to insulin resistance. And heart disease can be traced back to insulin resistance. Cancer can be traced back to insulin resistance. Dr. Thomas Seyfried was on my show 2 times. He wrote a fantastic book called Cancer as a Metabolic Disorder. He says it doesn't happen genetically first. The mitochondria shifts. He says Dr. Warburg didn't discover how to find tumors. He found how to feed tumors. And so when you look at all these things, are we not going to say, look, it's all the result of insulin resistance? If you stop ignoring things that make you insulin resistant, maybe we'll start to see these cancer trends come down. Is that too broad of a statement? Who wants to correct me?
Sure, well, you're the cancer biologist amongst us, so there is a lot. I know there's a lot more to say about this, and so educate us all.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to do. So I don't want to, revisit the dogma, what is currently exists, but I would like to point out that there is a strong connection with obesity, metabolism, disruption of the metabolism, and increased cancer. So there is that indication, and also biological clock plays a role in metabolism. So there is a lot of data on a basic science perspective, and also from epidemiological studies on humans suggest that shift work, including the shift workers, they have some metabolic disorders and increased cancer risk and cardiovascular disorders. So indeed, so there is also, it is well known in cancer biology that metabolism is one of the hallmarks of cancer, especially disrupted metabolic function is one of the hallmarks of hallmarks of cancer out of 10 pathways.
Interesting. Did you look at weight? Good. I'm sorry.
Please go ahead.
Oh. No. Do you get it all? And its effect on any of these outcomes. Having us awake at night under fluorescent lights, incandescent lights, LED lights is not the same thing taking them out. Does that play a role in any of this discussion at all?
Can you please repeat the question? We are having a hard time to hear.
Did you count the role of artificial light? Can you think? Really?
We're having some synchrony issues with the Ethernet, which might be on your end, Carl.
Yeah. I am just moving myself in and out. Can you hear better now?
A little bit.
Okay. You can hear me, right?
Yes, but it's a little fractious. It's a little. You're breaking up a little bit. I think we're losing packets of Ethernet.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly because I can see my camera freezing once in a while. So, did you take into account the role of artificial light in this entire discussion? Because obviously, shift workers aren't being exposed to daylight. They're being exposed to fluorescent, incandescent, and LED light. Is that worthy of inclusion in this discussion?
Yeah, in this particular study, we did not really focus on light, but it's absolutely a relevant part of the story. Everything that has the potential to disrupt circadian rhythms, whether it's in the central pacemaker in the brain or in the tissues, peripheral tissues in the body, is going to play a role in this story. It's as Shoban pointed out, there's 10 pathways, at least 10 pathways that we need to be concerned with. And what we have started to learn is that each of those pathways, in one way or another, are susceptible to circadian disruption, to dysregulation from the fact that your biological rhythms are out of sync with the light-dark cycle. But of course, if you start to play with the light-dark cycle itself by adding light to the environment, as we tend to do when we work at night, then that complicates the story further. What keeps coming to me as interesting and actually sort of baffling is how little responsive the master clock in the brain is to those sorts of things. We can definitely see the effect of artificial light on the central pacemaker in the brain. And if we were doing it under controlled circumstances in the lab, this experiment we did was not one of those experiments, but you can create an environment in the lab where you deliberately shift the biological clock and you can see it happen. But it almost always happens very slowly. What we found was that the peripheral tissues and the clocks in the cells are much more reactive to those sorts of changes in schedule. And yes, the light-dark cycle is probably involved in that also, but the main pathway for light is through the central pacemaker. And there is something else that you do when you put yourself in a night work schedule that all these other tissues are much more reactive to. And as you've pointed out, food is one of those things. We know for a fact that has to do with the metabolism side. I'm not really sure that that we also now quite understand what specifically about a night work schedule it is that changes these clocks in the cells that are disrupting these cancer pathways. Shoban, is that a fair statement that we don't really know that yet?
I believe so.
We're gonna take a quick commercial, and I'm gonna try to fix some things on this side here. And when we come back, we've got a lot more to discuss. You're watching and listening to Superhuman Radio. Stay tuned. We shall return. As a listener of this show, you know how important your gut is to your overall health. Bioptimizers has a potent product to heal and repair your gut unlike anything else. It's called Leaky Gut Guardian. It's powered by patented IGY Max, an egg-based protein that enhances gut health, reverses antibiotic damage, and strengthens your immune system. Available in 2 delicious powders, vegetarian vanilla and chocolate carnivore. Simply mix it with your favorite beverage. Repair your gut and power up your immune system risk-free and save 10% off. Go to shrnetwork.biz/leaky gut. Don't delay. Fix your gut today. Nanometer. Getting a massage post-workout is a proven strategy to facilitate better recovery. Getting to massage therapists can be difficult and expensive, especially in these times. The solution is the Meteor, a heated massage ball from Milestorm. Reduce pain and soreness and expedite recovery with the Meteor's research-backed vibration settings and therapeutic heat. It's convenient for travel and works on any body part. Go to shrnetwork.biz/meteor and use code SHR15 for 15% off and free shipping if you buy 2 or more. Start recovering better today. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor? Strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Welcome back. Hopefully we've resolved a couple problems during the break. So, are there any takeaways from your research that indicate any steps that can be taken? You know, I'm old enough to remember businesses being closed on Sundays, TV stations going off the air at midnight, and no such thing as a night shift unless you were a security guard in the factory. You know, there are a lot of people out there who are probably filled with angst. Like, what do I do? I can't quit my job. Is there anything that your research points to that could help perhaps mitigate the risk in any way, shape, or form? You want to go for that, Dr. McDermott? You feel up to that
one? Yeah, I mean, I don't think our research points directly to any of that. I think there probably are some indications. You know, our research certainly points out the importance of and continues to highlight the importance of the shift work in impact on health. I would imagine that Dr. Van Dongen would have a better handle on some of the other research that has come about mitigation.
What do you think? How about just supplementing with melatonin? Since melatonin is interrupted for shift workers, it's not an obvious thing that they're producing it when they finally do go home to sleep at 2:00 in the afternoon. Is melatonin suitable for therapy?
So melatonin is what we call a free radical scavenger. It cleans up free radicals in the system, among other things. And there's an interesting story that Dr. Gadamidi can tell on why that would matter here.
Okay, take it away, Dr. Gadamidi.
So starting from our study suggests that shift work schedule potentially compromise your genome. What it means that our genome integrity, which is important for protection against mutations and genomic instability, which is one of the hallmarks of cancer. And melatonin is, as Dr. Van Dagen pointed out, so it works as a free radical scavenger or antioxidant. So these DNA repair mechanism we have identified in our study is potentially melatonin could help in bringing down the oxidative stress, which is the DNA damage, which is influenced potentially through oxidative stress as well, which we could have been experienced because of the shift work condition. And second thing, and also the another point you asked in a few minutes ago about light at night, which is artificial light, and there are several studies on melatonin, especially on the basic science perspective, and the animal studies suggest that supplementing melatonin, especially after artificial light on the rat models, it potentially helps in decreasing the breast cancer outcome. So those studies were validated and which has been shown. However, I don't recollect if any studies on humans which needs to be performed.
Fascinating. You know, a lot of that research on melatonin, I just summed it up to the fact that when you're impairing melatonin production, you know, my problem with everything today, after doing this show for almost 16 years, is that there's no one thing. That, you know, thinking that there's just one thing is an insult to the complexity of the human body. It's like I discovered that a lot of the things attributed to vitamin D are actually the result of the melanocortin system. And that's why we don't see lots of things that people who live in sunny climates play out when they supplement with vitamin D. We're ignoring all this other stuff. And the same comes with melatonin. I think melatonin has a value, but I think we have to be careful to think that it's just melatonin that we're being robbed of when we don't sleep at night. And there's a lot more to that picture. So from this research, do you feel there are any things that we can say safely to the people out there who are working shift work? You pay attention to this or pay attention to that?
I think it's first and foremost, it's important to point out that yes, shift work comes with additional risks, and people should be aware of those. But at the same time, it's also true that many shift workers do not develop disorders or diseases over time, and have very fulfilling and very important jobs at night. It's as you pointed out, it's people that keep us safe at night, but it's also healthcare workers, of course, emergency response, and those people do really important jobs that also can give them fulfilling careers and allow them, in some cases, to work at times that are convenient for them. Although in other cases it's not convenient, but it's a mixture of those things. And so not all that there is to say about shift work is necessarily bad, but that doesn't mean that we should be blind to the possible consequences that shift work can have, right? It can have increased risk of cardiovascular disease, metabolic disorder, cancer, as we've talked about, mental health disorders, and a variety of other things, immune problems come to mind. And we should be aware of those. And what that really means is that if you're in a shift work scenario, if you are a shift worker or you are living a life that is like the shift worker, that to pay extra attention to your health. That means don't postpone the visit to the doctor because, well, if you're a shift worker, it just is much more inconvenient sometimes to actually find the time to do an office visit to get the care that you need, but actually take extra steps to make sure that you keep an eye on your health and have yourself checked out regularly, because prevention and mitigation early on are always the safer option. And specific to cancer, where this study was focused, is we've now learned that a key ingredient of the increased risk of cancer with shift work, it has to do with the circadian rhythms, those in the cell. And that's really important for people that might over time actually do develop cancer, because now they need treatment. And knowing that the rhythms are disrupted in the cancer pathways when you're in a shift work scenario, and that may be one of the reasons or the reason that you ended up developing cancer, is really critically important for treatment. And again, I would defer to Dr. McDermott and Dr. Gadamiti to explain why that now matters so much.
Who wants to go for that first?
I can take a crack at that. So I do some cancer research at the molecular level, and one of the things that is really interesting is that there's a large number of studies looking at molecular profiles of tumors, for instance, and trying to identify mechanisms. And in general, the role of circadian rhythms isn't taken into account in these studies. And so I don't know that I don't think it's necessarily a confounding factor in a large number of studies because everybody's basically day shift, but I think it needs to be taken into greater consideration when we're doing especially human studies, that these kinds of effects are very important. And I know that there's an emerging area of research about timing of drug treatment. So if you're taking drugs or supplements or whatever, they may have different effects if you take them at different times of day. And I don't think that's very well understood exactly what those effects are, but I think that's an area of research that really needs to be explored.
I agree with you on that. In fact, the way people like to call melatonin the hormone, I call vitamin D the daytime hormone. I think it's really mismatched to take vitamin D before bed, because it would traditionally be produced in sun exposure. And so I agree with you. There's a lot of nuances here that we just don't even, and it's hard to even factor those in. So, so I have an N=1 scenario. I actually, I have two friends. They're both pilots. One of them flies for a commercial carrier. The other one flies for a shipping company. The one who flies for the commercial carrier, for most of his career, he has flown the nighttime, overnight. But he's aging extremely well. I mean, all the phenotypical signs of aging, he doesn't have them. And that was counterintuitive to me, because it's like he's up all night, but he's up all night all the time. On his days off, his wife complains that he stays up all night and he stays in his shift, which makes it difficult for her to stay up with him, or she stays up with him and she's exhausted the next day because she's a day shift person. And I've said to him on numerous occasions, this guy's name, I said, you are aging amazingly. I mean, he has almost no gray hair, and he's close to 60 like me. And he doesn't have a weight problem. And he's always in this great, he doesn't have dementia. He doesn't have any of the things that you would expect that somebody for the past 25 years has been up every night. And he says to me, when I on my days off, I just stay up all night and then I go to sleep on my normal. So he stays in his schedule. The flip side of that is I have a friend who's works for a package company or a delivery service. He flies nighttime also, but on his days off, he doesn't stay up. He goes to sleep and he at night. And so he's constantly going back and forth between, tissue synchronization, and he just goes back and forth and back and forth. And he is very overweight. He has heart problems. I mean, you got to lose weight if you want to keep this job. So I know that's like an N=1 kind of scenario, but I have a feeling that people who work the night shift need to stay in that lane until they're taken off the night shift, and then they can regroup and try to get back into a day shift kind of time zone. Any comments on that? Any eyes rolling or anything like that?
No. You make an excellent point. It's if you can do it, it's a great idea to stay aligned to the schedule you're on, because once your work schedule or your time schedule and your sleep schedule and your biological clock and the rhythms in your peripheral oscillators are all in alignment, you don't really have any of these circadian mediated problems. You don't really have that internal synchrony that seems to be the precursor and the cause for many of these problems in playing out in various different ways. The hard part of that, as you also alluded to, is that the rest of society is not particularly malleable, not particularly forgiving for the fact that you live a schedule that's different from everybody else. So other things become more difficult, like taking care of your finances or going shopping. Now, interestingly enough, with the 24/7 society that we've created for us, there is actually more room for people to have schedules that really serve their personal either biological need or personal preference, to actually allow for that variation between people. And whereas I as I'm sure you do too, I see a lot of problems with the 24/7 society, there are also definite benefits to it. And that means that there are people who have certain particular cycles and lives and time their life a particular way, can actually do that much more easily than what let's say 50 years ago would have been possible. And I think that's a plus. And again, I don't want to say that that's all great. It's not. But it's important to keep an eye on the good things too, and sort of balance it.
I want to take our last commercial break. We have a couple questions from viewers, and then I have a final question about moving forward with what we are learning here today. Watching Superhuman Radio. We will be right back with more. Stay tuned. And let's get the music queued up, and here we go. TaylorMade Health is focused on making sure you're able to perform and look your best. They are a leader in game-changing supplements and cosmetic products. Whether you want to increase strength, expedite recovery, facilitate soft tissue repair, or reduce deep wrinkles, TaylorMade Health has you covered. TaylorMade Health is also the home to Dr. Seed's products such as BPC, BPC Plus, and the Chill Pill. All of my listeners can now get 20% off their first order with code TRY20. That's TRY20. This code can even be used on subscription orders. Visit shrnetwork.biz/TRY20 today and use code TRY20 for 20% off your first order. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON, the number 1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ads today.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
The power of light can be truly life-changing and an important element for every superhuman. Because of this, I want you to experience the power of award-winning Seluma light therapy. Seluma utilizes NASA research technology to improve health at the cellular level and is cleared by the FDA to effectively treat a variety of pain, muscle, and joint conditions, as well as facial wrinkles and acne. Our entire team here at Superhuman Radio uses it. Its innovative shape-taking design allows for easy placement anywhere on the body. Choose from 13 different models. For an exclusive listener discount, go to shrnetwork.biz/Seluma, that's CELLUMA, and use code SHR10 to save 10% off of one of these award-winning devices.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. A little bit later in the show, we're going to be talking about light therapy units and are they really worth the money? Do they do the things that they purport to do? But before we do that, I just want to hit a couple questions here real quick, or comments. Tommy D, who is an avid fan of the show, says he's been struggling with fragmented sleep for over 18 years now. He is a firefighter and paramedic. He works a 24-hour shift. Even on his days off, my sleep suffers. Perhaps elevated cortisol levels at night. I don't think that, I mean, it'd be cortisol, but it's just so much more when you dysregulate your sleep. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's cortisol is just one of many, many things that go out of alignment when you have schedules like that. And one of the things that we hear over and over again is that people who do these types of schedules for a long time, there's something about their body, there's something about their brain that adopts that as the new status quo and makes changes so that you can live a schedule like that, and tries to minimize the damage that can potentially do to the body. And those are in principle good things. Those are the mechanisms that kick in to make sure that in the face of sleep loss, in the face of circadian misalignment, if you do this over and over and over again, that you will be able to sustain life and living under those circumstances. There's a good analogy with blood pressure. If you're constantly stressed, we know that your blood pressure will go up, right? And that, of course, we think is a bad thing. But it's actually initially starts out as a good thing, because by having higher blood pressure, you can deal with the stress better. You can also maintain your ability to stay upright and live and have a life because of that. But over the long run, that high blood pressure now becomes a risk factor, right? And it leads to cardiovascular disease in the long run. But it started out as a good thing, as a response to a circumstance you have to deal with. And if you get chronic exposure to that circumstance, then over the long run, it becomes a bad thing. And we believe, this is a complicated story, and we don't have all the evidence in hand, but we believe that with shift work and with schedules that are outside the norm, if you will, something similar happens where your brain and your body finds a way to cope with that challenge. And that's initially a good thing, because then now you can. But then over time, there's wear and tear involved with that. We call it an allostatic response. And at some point, you get an allostatic load, and that allostatic load becomes a risk factor, now becomes a problem. And to get rid of that allostatic load, to reduce that response, or to rewind how you ended up there, I don't know that we actually know how to do that. So take a very, very long vacation maybe, but that's just anecdotal. I have no idea. We have no evidence to show that worked.
Change your life. I'm looking at, so this is one other question I want to just get up here. Robert Thompson says, how does diabolic disorder correlate with night shift? And are there any solutions? It correlates very high. People who work night shifts generally do develop insulin resistance and other associated disorders. I think that's self-explanatory. Let me just make sure there's no other valuable question here. All right, so my last question to you is this. Industry depends on night work. Competitiveness depends on night work. The companies that have large night shifts, UPS, FedEx, I mean, you name it, Amazon, I mean, they have people working all night long. Should they be sensitive to the higher health risks of these employees? And if so, what should they do for them? Should they compensate them greater for working the night shift versus, I'm helping a relative of mine who wants to enroll in the Army, and they pay $40,000 bonus at signing if you agree to be in the infantry, if you want to be a soldier and go out and fight. They do that to incentivize people to take jobs that have higher risks. Shouldn't industry look at this at the night shift and say, look, we have to help these people. They may be developing diseases because they are so loyal to this company. How do we support them? What do you think? Who wants to grab that one? Because just keep in mind that when you answer this question, you're going to piss a lot of big CEOs off. So
I don't know, but what particular advice I could give, but I could say that in Denmark, since several years, the hospital, I came to know from one of my colleagues that they do compensate for night shift workers, especially the healthcare workers, frontline workers, compared to the day shift workers. And also another thing, any organization can look at there is a particular type of individuals called chronotypes. So chronotypes are the one like early birds versus late owls. And if you can identify the your employees within the organization and assign them based on chronotype. For example, early shift workers, if they are early chronotypes, and late chronotypes are late owls, they can do the night shift work. So there are studies suggest that if you assign them or the early chronotype, they do early shift work, their risk of especially cancer was low. So versus if late chronotypes would do early shift work.
See, this makes perfect sense. And I'm very familiar with chronotype. And I've actually started to think that maybe there were some nocturnal humans in our past. That's why we have these different chronotypes, maybe some polymorphism in them, that they were nocturnal humans, and so that carried from generation to generational. So it is possible. The only problem I see, and I think about this a lot, actually, the only problem I see is in order for a big company, and I know I'm saying UPS and FedEx because they're the most obvious, and even Amazon, that have night shift workers. But in order for them to address this, they have to acknowledge it. And if they acknowledge it, now all of a sudden we're a very litigious nation here in the United States. You'll have, hey, have you worked night shift and gotten, become part of a class action lawsuit against your employer? That sadly hobbles them from actually going, if you work a night shift, you may be at a higher risk of cancer. We want to do something about that, because the next thing you know, they go, hey, you just admitted that. We're going to sue the heck out of you now.
That you make a very good point, but there's a counterpoint to be made in that many of these companies actually already try to do the right thing, and in many cases do. There's some of the carriers you just mentioned have provisions where night workers have an ability to get some sleep in between parts of their duty, so that they can get enough sleep at night, and then they supplement that with daytime napping, which is also in many instances paid time, and so I think there is a lot more awareness of these issues than we sometimes give companies credit for. You are absolutely right that talking about it openly comes with a certain risk of litigation and consequences. But at the same time, the employees and the employer and the people that are in management are aware of these issues already and are not, I think, deliberately trying to hide that in many cases. But we must acknowledge that this is a complicated issue and we don't have all the answers yet. So I would also suggest, and I know that this is kind of a shameless self-plug kind of thing, but there is research is needed, like what Dr. Gadamidi and Dr. McDermott and I have been able to do, which is oftentimes only possible because of the support we get from either the federal government or from industry that is interested in solving this problem, right? And I think we are very close to the point in science where we have a good enough handle on these issues that we can come up with viable answers and viable solutions, things that can be implemented and don't necessarily have to be all that expensive either. But we have an obligation as scientists to only recommend the things that we know for a fact will be working, will function, right? And so that gets back to something that Dr. Gadamidi said earlier about melatonin. We think we might have a solution or a partial solution with use of melatonin, but there aren't any human studies out there right now that have actually tried it. So let's do those studies. Let's have that knowledge out there. Let's make sure that we get that information sooner rather than later, because then we can start to implement it in the real world and we can make a big difference. And I think we can. We're ready.
Yeah, I agree. The rigors of science must be applied. You're absolutely right. You can't just give people advice because you think. I mean, that's what I do. I don't have a degree that anybody can threaten to take away from me. So I can put my foot in my mouth. Dr. McDermott, Dr. Meady, Dr. Van Dongen, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having us, Carl.
Thank you for having us. This is wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Take care. And you're invited back as soon as you have more research. I take 10 milligrams of melatonin every single night. I'd love to hear that I was actually doing something good for myself. So there you go. Take care. Take care. All right, we're going to take one quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about light therapy. The light therapy industry is already $1 billion industry, and it's estimated it's going to go another 5% between now and 2024. That's pretty big. But what do we need to know about these light therapy units? Is there evidence that they really work? And if they do, are they all created equal? We're going to get to the bottom of that a little bit later in the show, so stay tuned. We're going to take one quick commercial break, and we will be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Folks, I'm pleased to announce that Pure Nootropics is now carrying the antioxidant alpha-lipoic acid in its bioidentical natural form as R-Ala. R-Ala provides protection in many areas and has even been shown to promote weight loss. Check out the interview I did on episode 2608 back in October to learn more. Our friends at Pure Nootropics have been bringing you great products and deals since 2013, and they have another one with R-Ala. Go to shrnetwork.biz/pure and use code SHR30 for a whopping 30% off. Level up. Go Pure. Nanometer. The power of light can be truly life-changing and an important element for every superhuman. Because of this, I want you to experience the power of award-winning Seluma light therapy. Seluma utilizes NASA research technology to improve health at the cellular level and is cleared by the FDA to effectively treat a variety of pain, muscle, and joint conditions, as well as facial wrinkles and acne. Our entire team here at Superhuman Radio uses it. Its innovative shape-taking design allows for easy placement anywhere on the body. Choose from 13 different different models. For an exclusive listener discount, go to shrnetwork.biz/Celuma. That's CELLUMA. And use code SHR10 to save 10% off of one of these award-winning devices. Are you ready to change the way you age? Of course you are. That's why you're here. Juvicel is a new first-of-its-kind dietary supplement that includes 10 key research-backed ingredients shown in studies to support lifespan. Things like resveratrol, fisetin, quercetin, pterostilbene, sulforaphane, turmeric, all in a single dose. You may have some of these ingredients already, but Juvicel is the first to combine them all into a single product to support your lifespan. It's vegan, non-GMO, and sustainable. Live better longer with Juvicel. Go to shrnetwork.biz/livebetter. Use code SHR and save 20% off today. As a listener of this show, you know how important your gut is to your overall health. Bioptimizers has a potent product to heal and repair your gut unlike anything else. It's called Leaky Gut Guardian. It's powered by patented IGY Max, an egg-based protein that enhances gut health, reverses antibiotic damage, and strengthens your immune system. Available in 2 delicious powders, vegetarian vanilla and chocolate carnivore. Simply mix it with your favorite beverage. Repair your gut and power up your immune system risk-free and save 10% off. Go to shrnetwork.biz/leaky gut. Don't delay. Fix your gut today.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We're joined now by Patrick Johnson. He is the CEO of biophotos.com, and they make the Celuma unit that Elisa and I use at home. This is an amazing phenomenon. I don't think light therapy units were even on anyone's radar a decade ago. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think so. The technology used to initially introduce light therapy to the market was very expensive because it was adapted from photodynamic therapy, where you use light energy to trigger photosensitive products that are put on the skin. And it actually took us to figure out how to create a device that was both efficacious and affordable. And so I think that's why you're seeing a lot more of light therapy on the market, and it's sort of becoming common household term.
So I see a lot of light therapy units now evolving to selling their product based on how powerful they are, whether it's in watts or lumens, and price.
Yeah.
And I've actually burned myself with a light therapy unit. So here's the interesting thing that I've noticed. 2 things. First of all, there seems to be 1 or 2 companies, probably in Asia, that are making these units.
Yep.
And then lots of people are just slapping their label on them.
Yeah.
You can see this. This phenomenon is also seen in the vibration plate industry too. There's 6 different companies. It's the same unit. They just put their label on it. And so that tells me that due to the economies of scale, these units are probably getting less and less expensive to buy as a wholesale product, because it's not just you, it's 5 other companies buying it and selling it as their own. But more importantly, this constant drive to pay less per lumen or pay less per intensity of power is actually making some very dangerous products. I actually burned pretty severely where the LEDs were kind of close to my skin,
right?
Using another company's product, that made me think, my God, are we barking up the wrong tree with this? Isn't there too powerful? Is there a possibility of being too powerful?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are more than 5,000 studies on low-level light therapy, and we know that because we've cataloged them. And it's very clear from the clinical literature on low-level light therapy that there is a finite range of dose delivery that triggers the upregulation of the mitochondrial process. And fundamentally, that's what light therapy does. If you have cells that are mitochondrial compromised due to some sort of environmental insult or just the normal aging process, if you are delivering a dose within this range, you are going to re-regulate and upregulate the mitochondrial process. Outside of that range, you're either going to do nothing on the low end, or you have the potential of creating oxidative events that will damage the tissue. And so, my cautionary tale to your listeners is, if you are considering a light therapy device, you want one with regulatory credentials, whether it be FDA cleared or medically CE marked, UL marked, but something that designated that the device has been reviewed and either approved or cleared by a regulatory authority, because you don't know what you're buying if you don't do that. I know there are lots of conspiracy theories about the FDA, but not for little companies like us. I mean, we sort of have to follow the rules. We have to give them clinical data. We have to make good arguments, and that makes our products stand apart from anything you can get on Amazon.
Well, and let's be clear about it. You could buy a light bulb that you use at McDonald's to keep you warm and point at yourself and say, "Oh, I've got a red light unit," but it may not be the exact wavelengths that have been studied,
right?
I mean, right?
Yeah, and Carl, you're kind of breaking up for me. That may be my signal. I don't know if it's your signal.
We're having a problem with the internet here. I've actually got. I'm off the air tomorrow because I'm installing a completely new router and modem to this problem. But I mean,
so I got your question, and the nice thing about light therapy is its ranges, but it's finite ranges, and so. There are specific wavelengths of light energy that are more documented and supported in the clinical literature than others. But then again, there are wavelengths of light which occur to us as different colors that have no documentation. So, you can jump on Amazon and buy a claimed light therapy device that has green light and pink light and yellow light and white light. And it's very likely that, the same company is making Christmas tree decorations and there's nothing efficacious about the light energy that's coming out of those. And so, you buyer beware. If you're interested in a light therapy device, look for something that has FDA clearances. And if someone is saying that their light therapy device is FDA approved, go in the opposite direction, because the FDA doesn't approve light therapy devices. It uses a different review mechanism that results in a clearance, not an approval. So if someone's saying their LED device is approved, they don't know what they're talking about.
Interesting. What are some of the top positive responders to the Soluma light therapy unit? Because I learned a long time ago from a guy named Frank Napoli. He taught me about sales when I was a very young man. He said, there's only two reasons people don't buy something. He said, they don't understand it or they don't believe in it. And they can't believe in it if they don't understand it.
Right.
What do you think some of the misassumptions about light therapy units are? And who do you see as those who see the greatest beneficial response from a Soluma unit? Not just those other light therapies, but your unit.
Yeah. Well, and so, 10 years ago, I came to this very skeptically. I came out of orthopedics, which is very biomechanical oriented, very invasive. And, I come on, you're using light to heal the body. But, when you peel back the layers, arguably the definition of aging is the degradation of the mitochondrial process, the body's inability to produce cellular energy and heal itself naturally. And so to the degree that we all suffer from environmental insults, whether those be disease, illness, injury, bad behavioral habits, we all can benefit from efficacious light therapy device like the Soluma. And so, it's a whole body, whole family device. It has applications in pain management as well as skin health and wound healing. And so, from our perspective, light therapy is the functional equivalent of personal computers. There should be one in every home.
Interesting. In fact, physicians who listen to my show should reach out to you. A very talented physician named Dr. Jeremy Gearman, who's with Inertia.
Talked to him yesterday.
Yeah. So he reached out to me, and I connected him with you. And this guy is so talented with biomechanics. I mean, I'm actually going to have my hips and knees done by him. He does ultrasound guided therapies where he injects certain things into the joint. And he said that he is really excited about working with the Soluma product because he's done a lot of research. And he said, this looks like something I can use in my clinic. So a lot of doctors need to think about this as well. But the one that fascinates me the most, the one that I would think people would be running with cash in hand, is acne. Acne is a very painful thing to live with, especially, and because it strikes young people. It erodes their self-confidence. It changes who they are. They don't blossom the way they should because they're so, it's such a painful, it's right there. You can't hide it. It's not something like a bad tattoo that you can wear a long shirt. Tell me about the effects of Soluma on acne, please.
Yeah, there's kind of three legs to the acne stool. There is the teenage acne, as you point out, which can be, piling on adolescence, where kids are embarrassed to be out in the world because their acne is so bad, and parents exhausted because they can't do anything for their kids. So we have, sort of heartbreaking testimonials from parents saying, I just need to tell you that, the Soluma has been life-changing for my children. The second is we see increasingly more cases of adult onset acne.
Yeah.
And that's a function of all the goofy, body chemistry that we're producing, given all of the sort of toxins out there in the world and the meds people are on. And so, this isn't just a young person's condition or a young person's product. And then finally, with COVID and everybody wearing masks, you have masking and the skin breaking out because of the bacteria on the skin. And so, the Soluma is perfect for all of those things. Interestingly enough, my at the time that we were developing the Soluma, my son was 17 and was struggling with acne, and his dermatologist wanted to put him on Accutane. And it's like, it's like, that's almost chemotherapy. And it's like,
we don't
want to do that. And so his mom was taking him to her esthetician who was doing peels on him, and it was taking care of the acne, but it was making him sort of raspberry red, which, it's like,
what do you want to embarrass you? Which one?
And so that's my son. We took him off everything. We put him on the Soluma for 2 weeks. He completely cleared up, which we didn't expect, and therefore we hadn't taken before pictures. So we took him off the Soluma and let him break out again, and took the before pictures, and then treated him and took the after pictures. So it's a great standalone treatment at home, but it's also a great adjunctive treatment for practitioners who are treating acne in their practices to add to, extractions and exfoliation and, the deep cleansing of the skin.
Now, the next category that is kind of akin to that would be women and fine lines and wrinkles, which they will literally spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on face cream that don't produce any results at all. But this is another area where Soluma seems to have some magical effects, correct?
Well, yeah, and not only hundreds of dollars, but thousands of dollars on neurotoxins. And, again, sort of going back to the normal aging process, when we all get to about 40 years in age, our fibroblast cells stop producing the levels of collagen elastin that they did when we were younger. And as a result, we develop fine lines and wrinkles in our skin. So what we're able to do with the Soluma, as opposed to paralyzing tissue with neurotoxins, we're actually able to turn the fibroblast cells back on. We can increase the production of elastin and collagen and, eliminate the fine lines and wrinkles in the skin. And, nature takes time. And so, there is we're a culture of immediate gratification.
Yeah,
if
right.
I can walk into an office and get an injection and, walk out with, looking differently.
Frozen face. Yeah, frozen face.
But who knows what the long-term effect of that are, as opposed to just saying, well, let's remind the body that it knows how to do this and help it do that, and take a little longer, a few weeks, but get the same result, with a device that has like lots of applications. And so you just take care of yourself.
That's brilliant. And this is another reason that I think that women would really be interested. So the Soluma comes in a variety of different products that'll do small to very, very large areas. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/Soluma, CELLUMA, and use the code SHR10, you'll save 10% off. So Elisa and I are getting ready to do another episode of Casual Friday. And one of the things that she's been playing with is the Soluma, and she's going to be talking about it on the air.
Oh, great.
Last Friday of this month. So, yeah, I mean, she says she notices changes, but you're right. It takes a couple weeks before you start noticing anything. She said that she notices a plumpening of the skin that looks like the fine lines are disappearing. And so,
yeah. And actually what that is that's a knocking down of the inflammatory process. I mean, to a great degree, all of the things that we commonly suffer from are inflammatory based. And, one of the two major benefits of low-level light therapy is knocking down the inflammatory process. Inflammation is the body's natural protection mechanism against further injury, but it also retards the healing process. So kind of the 1-2 punch of light therapy is knocking down the inflammatory process and then giving cells the energy they need to function properly that they're not able to produce for themselves because of compromised mitochondrial process.
There's something else that's very easily identifiable about the Soluma unit. As someone who spent a period of my career in the electronics industry, Soluma uses surface-mounted LEDs. And if you look at all the other light therapy units, they have these big, gigantic LEDs that they use.
Yeah.
It almost looks like a little sombrero. And the fact that Soluma is flexible, which
right.
it's attributable to the fact that you use the surface mount board technology to
right.
create, which is much more expensive to do than just plot a couple holes and stick a bunch of LEDs in it in a flexible material. But something has to be said for the quality of Soluma. Soluma, even though you can buy one for your home, it's clear that it was designed to be used in clinical practices, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I've had a couple conversations recently. Light therapy has sort of gone the way of hearing aids. Forever hearing aids have been something that's, required, a visit to a hearing specialist, the custom molding to the ear, and very expensive. And, very recently, hearing aids are now available over the counter, and they're just as effective as the really expensive ones you had to get from your hearing specialist. Light therapy is very much the same way. When we entered the market, for the most part, the credentialed efficacious devices on the market were, anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000, and so just didn't make sense being at home. And so really the fundamental charter of the company was to get efficacious low-level light therapy to the masses for home use. And so we had to take a little different path up the light therapy mountain. And that is all what drives the flexibility and the shape-taking features of the Soluma. Because if we can get the light emission closer to the surface of the skin, which ties back to one of the reasons we have surface-mounted LEDs, we're able to provide efficacious doses of light energy, but without very expensive and powerful devices. So, back to your earlier question, if someone is promoting their LED device as the most powerful, very likely that's not a good thing. One, it's probably more expensive, and two, it's probably less efficacious than the Soluma.
I have to mention that in the past, we've erroneously said in the graphics that free shipping was included in the Soluma, and that's not the case. And you were gracious enough to extend free shipping to those people early on. But it does not include free shipping. I'm being asked to clarify that for the audience. Again, shrnetwork.biz/Soluma, CELLUMA, SHR10 for 10. Pick the one that fits your needs the best and give it a try. And now you offer people some sort of guarantee or something like that, don't you? I remember reading on your website. Didn't you have some sort of a
well, there's a two-year warranty on the device.
That's what it was.
Which is more than industry standard. Yeah. I think unfortunately, back to Amazon, we've sort of been accustomed to, companies with economy of scale being able to build in the risk of taking product back. And because the Soluma is a Class 2 medical device, if it's used, it can never be resold. It can't be repackaged.
Right.
So when you're buying a Soluma, it's a brand new device that's never been seen the light of day. And so we want to make sure, as a company, from a cultural standpoint, we're very education oriented. We want people to be making informed purchases. And so, if someone calls us and says, I want to see if I can buy a Soluma to treat my toe warts, don't buy it. Because
you're going to discourage them. But there is a 2-year warranty on it. This is
absolutely.
A lot of electronic products today, including some of these red light therapy units, they have 90-day warranty on them. You get them home, something goes wrong, you're stuck, and they'll fix it for you, but you got to pay to ship it back. You got to pay the charge to repair it, and then they'll ship it to you. So the 2-year warranty, and that's what I was getting at. The 2-year warranty is really extensive on an electronic device. Most electronic devices, maximum 1-year warranty.
Yeah.
Maximum. So
and if it breaks and you got it on Amazon or somewhere like that, and it's made in China, who knows who can repair it?
Right. All right, one more time. Let's go ahead and promote this one more time, and that is the Soluma Light Therapy Unit. You can save 10% off if you go to the website shrnetwork.biz/Soluma, CELLUMA. SHR10 is the code, and we will be talking more about it in the next upcoming Casual Friday, because that is something that Elisa is going to be mentioning in her skincare regimen. A lot of women watch the show and they say, what does Elisa do for her skin? So we're going to be talking about all this sort of stuff. It all plays in. Like I said earlier in the earlier interview, we all want to know what's the one thing. Well, if you have a human body and that's what you're talking about, there is no one thing. Saying that there's one thing or one way for anything when it comes to the human body is an insult to the complexity of the human body. And this is one of the things that she uses, and she's very, very pleased with it. We'll talk more about that. Again, show them some love. Soluma and Biophotos is a sponsor here at Superhuman Radio. And we produce great content. It's free for the taking, but the sponsors make it possible. So if you learn something this month on a show, you can thank Patrick Johnson for being a participating sponsor in this show. And the way to thank him is show him some love. Go to his website, check out the products, and make a purchase. I mean, if you need to, buy from our sponsors before you buy from some random person out there. That's it. Patrick, thank you for making time to be here today, brother.
Carl, it's my pleasure. You have a great day.
Take care. Take care. And there's one other thing that I want to mention before we go off the air, because I failed to do this today, but I did do it yesterday on the Blueprint Power Hour. So our friends over at Pure Nootropics have uridine monophosphate. I just ordered some yesterday. It is supposed to increase both choline and dopamine, which, by the way, I expect it to increase libido. Because when you increase dopamine and choline, same time, there is always an increase in desire and libido. And if you take it with omega-3s, it's supposed to be like a biohacker's stack as far as increasing mood and brain function. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/URIDINE and use the code SHR30, this is just for the next 5 days. You will save 30% off your bottle of uridine monophosphate. And I will be talking more about it very shortly when I get to experiment with mine. But buy it now and save 30%. What the hell? All right, that's it for today. I'm off the air tomorrow. I will be working on the internet connectivity here at the studio, so we don't have any more log jams while we're doing shows. Hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. Thank you for being here today, and we'll see you next week.